Thank you for being here. My name is Darren Sides. I am the Associate Pastor of Discipleship and Missions here at Southside Baptist Church. We are joined today with a few people. We have Peggy and Miles, Geneva, and Gary Weber, our Senior Pastor. Today we are doing our Sunday night talkback as we begin a new series called The Little Things. And we just wanted to have a conversation about the little things that go on, as well as kind of relating it to today's social and political environment. And so in that, we have our lovely guests, Miles and Peggy are here. Miles is a retired JSO officer, so we figured that would be a great view. And Geneva's here, and if I cannot think of anybody more in our church who does these little things that nobody knows of, but just makes such a big impact, especially on us on staff. Geneva is always being extremely encouraging and showing off the gospel and all the small things that Geneva and Marvinia, her daughter, do on a daily basis. So thank you for that. And here we are. So Gary, today's the talk back off of your message. So for me, I guess my first question to you is, how was it doing a live message in the midst of protests going on all the way around our building while you're speaking?
Well, Wednesday night was an interesting night. You know, we didn't say it overtly in the recording, but we had gotten word just a few hours before the service at 6:30 that there was going to be a protest, you know, that was going to march down really around the church to the San Marcos Square and back. And you know, as Miles and I talked earlier, you know, these protests and all the attention that's surrounding them, and the bad actors sometimes that are trying to come out and corrupt a good cause. And, you know, we were hearing all kinds of different things about what was going to happen, and even to the point of, you know, getting some mild pressure to say, hey, you probably shouldn't have services tonight. And I don't know, something just inside of me was like, no, you know, we shut down for 10 weeks for COVID, and I think that was the right thing to do, but something about that just felt like that was a reaction out of fear. And so I sent the word out. I sent an email out to the congregation saying, hey, you need to be aware this is happening. We're still going to have services. If you are concerned, you know, we're encouraging you to stay home. You can join us online on Sunday. That's one of the blessings about what we've been doing. But we're going to go ahead and have church, because that's, you know, we feel like what we're doing in preaching the gospel is the most productive thing related to the problem that the protesters are talking about, which is, you know, how do we have justice and righteousness, and how do we find racial reconciliation? And we think the gospel is about all those things. So we went ahead and had church, but it was tense. I mean, I'll be honest, it was very, very tense, not because of the issue itself is tense, but just because of all the different opinions and thoughts and fears that were going on, and people saying that there were bricks staged around, and were people going to be safe going in and coming out. But I'll be honest, so what we did was, I called our chairman of the deacons, Richard Elkins, and I said, hey, Richard, can we get some deacons to be out front where the protesters are going to go by, and we'll just put bottles of water out, and we'll just give out water as protesters go by, and just extend kindness in the hopes of saying, hey, you know, there's not a lot of big things we may be able to do right now, but that's one little thing we can do. And man, the response was overwhelming. And those protesters coming by, there were protesters yelling at other protesters for stepping on the grass. I mean, they were like, you know, and they were walking they were walking in crosswalks. You know, they were all going down in crosswalks, and I mean, it was peaceful, and people were expressing their opinion, and we had our Love Everyone Always signs out, and the people took some of those with them, and so it was a good night. But meanwhile, on the inside of the church, you know, we're starting this series called The Little Things, and just one of the things about it is, you know, when you're facing overwhelming circumstances and over situations that seem like, what, I can't do, I'm powerless. I think that's really the time when you need to embrace the little thing you can do, as opposed to the big things you can't. So of course, this series was planned weeks and weeks, even months before. I mean, I had no idea this was going to go on, but you know, I trust God's sovereignty. The context and the timing of it is what it is. And so hopefully we can do that. And so one of the things tonight I wanted to do is I just, you know, I wanted us to invite some of our members in the church we don't have an overwhelming number of African American members of our church, but as I talk to Miles and Peggy, as I talked to Geneva about what's going on and tried to get their perspective, I thought it was important for us. One little thing we could do tonight was just having a very open conversation about what it's like to be Black in America right now, what it's like to hear all of this. I don't think I can understand that. I know I can't understand that. And I think we've got to have these conversations. With one little thing we can do to help bring about the kind of reconciliation we all long for. So I just wanted to start by asking you guys, just first of all, how are you doing? Like, how are you processing this, and what is your sort of response to it? And I know we've had a chance to talk before, but I'd love if you're willing to share that with the folks who are joining us tonight. I think it's important for our whole congregation to hear this from you personally. So thank you for joining us tonight and doing this. Peggy and Miles, I'll start with you guys.
Okay, Pastor, thank you so much for inviting us tonight, and also the wellness check on Friday. I think we talked Friday. Yeah, that meant a lot. It meant a lot because, you know, in a situation like this, and it's perfectly okay, folks really don't know how to respond. But you know, you dove in. Hey, just wanted to hear your voice. Just wanted to check on you. And we appreciate that so much. Thank you. For us, this week has been tearful. To be perfectly honest with you, we've shed some tears this week, and we understand, you know, firsthand what's going on. Some things that Peg and I have experienced. You know, my upbringing and how to conduct myself and stores, and you know what to watch out for and that kind of thing. I mean, today I'm still followed in stores as if I'm going to steal something, and it's a little disheartening. You know, there's a lot of bias out there, and my hope is that people will lose that, that they'll keep the conversation going, that this just, you know, doesn't blow by the wayside, right. And that, you know, get engaged. If you hear that odd conversation, that offhanded comment among people that you associate with or coworkers is perfectly okay. Hey, wait a minute, you know, we really don't need that.
That's good.
So, yeah.
When coming from the police.
Yeah. Geneva?
Geneva, tell us a little bit about kind of as you watch all this, and how are you doing, and what's your reaction?
Okay, as he said, I've shed tears over it too, you know, because a lot of people have been hurt. You know, I mean, a lot of people's hearts are grieving, you know, and sometimes parents don't know what to think because they do have young Black men, you know, that live here and all over, you know, and we're not quite sure, you know, what's going to happen now or later. But my biggest thing is when I started seeing everything that was happening, was all I wanted to do was pray. I went to God and I said, Lord, I said, you see what's happening. I said, you know, people need someone that's going to reach out to them. I've been seeing, you know, in different states how the police officers are banding together with people. They're not afraid to do it now. You know, they're willing to step out and say, okay, I see what's going on. And some of them are even saying, even in the past, I had been a part of the problem, but I want to fix it. And, you know, that's a big deal when you hear that, you know. And so I want to go back a little bit from when I first started at Southside. So I was not the first member of my family to come to Southside. My son Elijah, which has had some problems in his past, he started at Southside first. I found out from him after he went to jail that Southside Baptist Church had been there for him in ways that I never imagined. I didn't even know what's going on. He told me, he said, Mama, he said, Southside Baptist Church reached out to me. They made sure I had food. They made sure I had somewhere to chill in my head. They made sure that I was getting some of the help that I needed, because he had a drinking problem. And he spoke so very highly of Pastor Gary. And so he told me, he said, I really need you to meet him, you know. And so I said, okay, I said, I'm going to go and meet this pastor, because he just talked so wonderfully about this church. And when I came there, the love that I felt, because my son is a African-American young man. His skin is very dark. You know, some people shy away from that for some reason. And because he has had problems in his past, a lot of people didn't want to deal with it. But one thing I can say is that at Southside Baptist Church, they dealt with him. You all helped him. You even now, he is just so overjoyed about Southside Baptist Church. You know, when he calls me, he said, Mama, he said, I want to tell everybody what a blessing Southside Baptist Church has been to me. And because, you know, like you said, Pastor Gary, we don't have a lot of African-American people in our church, but I need people to know that even though we have this bond and we have this love among us, that I feel like most everybody, and I know in any church, you know, there are going to be some people that don't know how to handle things, you know, but for the majority, from what I've experienced, African Americans are acceptable at Southside Baptist. And when you said about how people from our church the other night, when they were protesting, how you put the water out there, because the word of God said, with love and kindness have I drawn you. And then you said, they started saying, you know, don't step on the grass. They were showing respect because they felt respect. You know, they felt like these people care, because they were out there and they greeted them and they welcomed them in their protests, you know. So for me, all of this, I feel like, and hopefully in the end, we're going to come together more as a people and not as looking at color. Because you know what, my mama, when I was growing up, my mama used to always tell us, because my mama passed away, but she used to always tell us, she said, I'm going to tell you the only difference in people. She said, the only difference is the color of our skin. She said, we do everything the same.
Yeah.
And you know, and when you read, and when you read in the Bible, it tells you God has no respect of persons. People have respect of persons, but God don't. So as we extend our love, we can't. People can't help but be drawn. And when I look at you as a couple, I've always admired y'all, because y'all are a beautiful couple to me, because my mama raised us. She said, you don't look at color. When I was raising my children, we always lived in a neighborhood where they were black and white. Not that we particularly looked for that, but just always happened like that. Mm-hmm. My husband was a welder. The majority of the people that he worked with, they were white people, but we got along so well. We had cookouts together. You know, our children grew up. They grew up together. They did things together. So, you know, I don't look at color. I'm glad that my mom raised me like that. Yeah. So, and I love being as Southside Baptist, because I get that feeling of love from the time I first walked in that place. And I'm going to tell you, for my son, because y'all have never met him, but for my son to have came to me and told me about Southside Baptist and the love that he felt, I think you can relate to what I'm saying, you know, because he's a young black man and he had a troubled past, but love was shown. And I feel like now his life is changing because that love was shown. They didn't look at his color. They didn't look at how dark his skin was. They loved him. They wrapped their arms around him even before I met them. And that's what drew me, because the Bible said, with love and kindness have I drawn you. That's what drew me there. That's what has made me stay. The love that I have gotten. Pastor Gary, I'll tell you something that Pastor Gary did one time. My daughter Marvinia, she had to go to the hospital, and somebody had informed him that she was in the ER at Mayo. And it was at night, you know, it was kind of late. And so all of a sudden, I see him walking down the corridor. This been like a couple of years ago. And I see him walking down the corridor. And I said, what are you doing here? I said, you're busy. You know, I said, you have a lot on your plate. He said, And he said, I'm here because I want to be and I need to be. So I just pray that in the midst of all this, that we can come together, because that's what God wants for us. And my heart does hurt for those young men that lost their lives, because I can't even imagine their mama's pain. Because I think about my son, and I said, I even told Pastor Garrett, and I'm going to say this, and I know we're on Facebook Live, and my son right now, he's in prison. But I said, right now, I'm glad he's in prison. And he's safer in prison right now. So that when he comes out, I'm hoping that things would be a little better, and that he'll take his life and do better with it, while he's able to sit back and look at what's going on. So you know what, and everybody that's listening, I'll desire your prayers for that, because I don't want him to stay that number that he's been tagged. You understand what I'm saying? So I know I talk a lot, I said a lot, but I really appreciate my church. And I appreciate everybody in my church. I love everybody in my church, because everybody, I just feel like we're a family, and I can't wait to get back so I can just hug everybody.
Well, we can't wait for that too. And thank you. You're always so encouraging. I sometimes I just feel like maybe the reason I even call you is more for me than for you, because you're always so encouraging, Geneva, always. So if anybody needs to be encouraged, just call Geneva, because she is an encourager for sure. Miles and Peggy, I know as we talk about this and we think about what's going on around us, Miles, you've got a unique perspective in that you're also retired JSO, and so there's a real tension that we feel, just in terms of what it means to live in a peaceful society and maintain justice and order, but also know that when those very organizations that you're looking to bring about peace and justice and all those things, when you see that they're the ones being questioned in terms of inciting racial responses or systemic racism that's inherent in that, like it gets really confusing. It gets really, really difficult to know. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, both as an African-American and as a retired law enforcement officer, can you help us understand that a little bit? Can you give us some insight?
Well, understand first of all that, the protest, it's absolutely necessary. But
Yes.
The caveat to that is that there are those, a very small percentage of them, that sort of embed themselves within the cause, hence the burglaries and the fire, the looting, that kind of thing. But I don't want that to detract from what the message is all about.
Right.
And also for folks that are still on the street, I don't want them, the officers, to, and I don't want them to police being afraid.
That's right.
I want them to still be able to maintain the objectivity, be able to, rely on their conflict resolution, and be able to engage with folks in the community, folks of color, without that suspicion. Yes, there's times when you absolutely have to do what you need to do to address an issue. Yes. But that's not for the majority of people.
That's right.
It's just important that they continue to engage with the community, talk to folks, let people know, listen, I'm part of the solution. You know what? I want to make a difference. But I was asked in Grow Group this morning if I had a chance to be on the street now.
Are you glad you're not?
Yeah, I'm glad.
I know.
If
I expected him to say, heck yeah. Woo.
no,
But-
I wish, I was out there trying to make a difference. There are those who, look at my skin color and, because of law enforcement, they'll say, well, you're part of the problem. You're one of them because of the uniform.
But you would actually get it from both directions then in that regard, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the one hand, law and order has to be restored. There's a job that needs to be done. And there are members of the community who look at us of color, officers of color, and hey, how can you do this? You're part of the problem.
But they can't be silent either.
Yeah.
They need to, if you see something, say something kind of thing.
And that's my next point. For us to police ourselves, I think we know the people who ride in the subsectors next to us and with us. I think that fall back on the oath that you took, and if that element's out there and it's embarrassing the profession, and you're going to make me a witness because of some foolish thing that you did, we just can't. You can't stand by and let that happen. So if we police ourselves, I think that'll go a long, long, long way.
Peggy, we were talking before. You said something about you and Miles being an interracial couple and the different reaction, just something as simple as in the store as you're leaving. I want people to, as painful as that is, even for me to ask you to say that again, it's painful for me to say, but I think it's important for people to hear sort of what you face on a sometimes daily basis, because I just don't think people, until we walk a mile in someone else's shoes, it's hard. But tell everyone a little bit about what we were talking about and sort of that sort of systemic racism you face.
So initially, when we would go to Walmart, they started this thing where they're checking receipts as you leave the store. And when that first began, that it wasn't known that items that weren't bagged, they were checking the receipt as you walked out the door. But when they first started this, I noticed that when I'd have the cart and they would ask to see my receipt. Everything's bagged, but I would still get asked to see the receipt. So we decided to switch off once.
One of the last times Miles flashed his badge and he said, "Do you really think I'm the one that would be doing this?" And I said, let's check it out. We got a little bit upset with him that particular day, but the next time we went, because he took the receipt away right away, and I'm like, just leave it out. You know what's going to happen. But I said, let me push the cart. Well, guess what? Nobody stopped us.
Wow.
Of course, everything's bagged, but now the clerk says, "Do you want your milk in a bag?" Oh, yes, I
Absolutely.
do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Don't want the hassle
Everything
at the
goes in
door.
a bag. And that's
Yeah.
what we say. We don't want the hassle at the door.
Yeah.
And the other one that I mentioned the other day, Gary, was the restaurant one that really ticked. Walmart gets him with the cart, but the restaurant gets me. So we're in a restaurant and we're obviously a couple, and the wait staff will say separate checks. Say no, and I said like 2 out of 10 times the wait staff will ask that question. And finally, I don't know, probably about a year ago, I said, why would you ask that? And she said, "Oh, I ask that of everyone." And I'm like, no, you don't, because I watch after that.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. It's just
So irritable.
It irritates me. Yeah, for sure.
Of course it does.
But things are different. Yeah, go ahead. But those are the two things that get to me the most, that are really different.
Yes, I understand. I would like to say this. So since all this stuff has been going on, I went in Publix, and I went and I had maybe 20 items. In the Express, I think they say like 15 items. So the lady, she told me, she said, "Well, you can't come through the Express." And I said, "Well, I've only got like a couple of pieces over." I said, "I see people doing it all the time, And she said, and she stood in front of the aisle. She was, how they stand out to let you know that they're available. Well, she stood where I couldn't go in. She said, "Because you have too many items." So I'm like, well, let me speak to a manager. I said, because I'm like over like a couple of pieces. So I'm talking to the manager. And as I'm talking to the manager, a lady with a buggy full of stuff She went through the express, and she took her. And I will say, I did go to my car and cry because it hurt me so bad. I was like, because, you know, this is not what God wants. You know, this is not the way that things should be. You know, and I was like, and the lady that went through, she was white. You know, so, and I told the manager, I said, well, look at that. I said, what are you going to say about that? And so he told me, he said, well, I'll take care of it later. I said, okay. I mean, what else could I do? You know, but, you know, the devil, the enemy, is trying to draw division between people, because he wants things to get worse and worse. But I said, to do my part, I've got to pray. And I can't play into that situation, you know, because I could tell that, I guess maybe she's irritated about everything that's going on. But I understand what you're saying, Peggy. I understand exactly what you're saying, you know, and you know, I guess that's the way of the world. But that's why God tells us, he says, we got to be in the world, but not of the world. So we got to know how to pray through these things, you know, even though sometimes, like the protests, you know, people are trying to be heard, you know. And I want to say this too about the looting and the destruction. Now, I totally disagree with that part of it. But I want to put this little part in there. Some of those young people out there, now for some of them that are doing that, that's just their way of life. I mean, that's just what they do. But some people don't know how to express themselves. So they're taking this because they don't know how to express without the violence, you know. So they're doing what they think is okay, you know. And like I said, you know, for some people, it's just a way of life. They just love doing it. But I truly believe that there are some out there that has done it, probably following up behind others and trying to be a part of the crowd, you know. So, and we really need to pray for them, because violence is, you're not being heard through violence. Violence is not going to profit anything. The only thing it's going to do, I mean, look at the businesses that have been destroyed. And I mean, because we were just getting past the pandemic, you know, and now a lot of people are in worse shape now than they were after the pandemic, because, and I felt sorry for those Amazon drivers, how they were being attacked, and you know, so it's going to take us to band together and just pray, and just keep believing God that this attention that America is getting right now, that it's going to make a difference. You know,
that's good.
So
yeah, that's good. Miles, you are old enough to have experienced this, not just this time, but other times where it's sort of bubbled up to the surface. And I think sometimes we forget that just because it bubbles up to the surface every so many years, that doesn't mean it's not broiling at the bottom all of the time. But I know we talked a little bit about Detroit and some of the things you experienced, and I think it's important for us to hear as well, like what, from a perspective of seeing this multiple times, and I know Geneva, you've seen it too, and what Miles would you say in terms of this what's going on right now in comparison? Like what, of course the root cause is maybe the same, but what would you say about it in comparison, or relating? How would you relate the two?
In 1967, I was 10-ish, yeah, and Detroit was on fire. Martial law was declared, and I remember the looting. I remember the fires, but I remember vividly all the gunfire, shootouts with the police. I remember when the National Guard showed up. I still remember tanks on the street. I remember troop carriers were on the street. Everyone was confined to their block and could not leave past 6 p.m. That was the curfew time. But it reminded me of current day.
That's when your dad said, "Don't be afraid, tell them I'm afraid."
Yeah, they were shooting between our house, and I remember laying under the kitchen table, and I was shaking. I was afraid, and I remember my dad said, he looked at me and he said, don't be afraid until you see I'm afraid. I never forgot that. Don't be afraid until you see that I'm afraid. But the bullets were flying. It was pretty loud,
Wow.
pretty violent. I remember a gas station just a block away going up in flames. The explosions with that. But it's the same thing that's occurring today. That's that small element that embeds themselves in a cause, and hence the looting. And
They travel.
yeah, they do. Yeah,
Yes,
that's
that's true.
and they do. They come from other states.
They do.
But let's not let that detract from the real meaning here.
That's right.
My mom and dad telling me, going in stores, make sure you don't touch anything. We were told that if something comes up missing, that we would be the first ones accused of being stealing. So we didn't touch anything in the store unless we were prepared to pay for it, and never leave the store without a receipt. And I do that to this very day.
Yes, he does.
To this very day, I will not. I get a receipt because that's the way I was raised.
So Miles, how
Yes.
did that experience in Detroit end up and even influencing you when you joined the force? So did it impact you in that decision, or did you ever think back to it?
I didn't think back to it, and I started writing as a civilian observer with some officers that I knew, and man, my first riot, I was there, and so I prayed about it. I prayed fervently about it. I wanted to know if this was a chosen career for me. Lord, if it is not, I don't need to pass the first step in this process. And then I passed another step. And it just progressed until the day I raised my hand and swore an oath. I worked under 3 different sheriffs. I came in not long after Dale Carson left, came under McMillan, Sheriff Glover, and of course Rutherford, who was my last sheriff that I worked under.
He was a member of First Baptist at the time, and he had all these pamphlets in his briefcase and
I had a
things.
lot
And
of tracts.
everybody got one.
Yeah.
They're in the back seat.
I had a lot of tracks. Yeah, I had a lot of tracks.
Yeah.
And it's interesting though, and
That's wonderful.
I'll wrap up. It's
Right.
interesting. I see people this very day who will approach me. I don't remember them, but they, the first thing they say is, hey, you don't remember me, do you? Okay.
It's like,
Yellow light.
we don't know why.
But
They
they say, listen, you know what, you arrested me once, and I appreciate the way you treated me. It really was the best thing, because I was able to clear a lot of things that I had going on, and I just want to thank you. So
That's awesome.
Yes, it is.
And Peggy and Geneva, I think both of y'all also have another unique perspective here in the midst of this current situation. Peggy, as the wife of a police officer, and then Geneva, even as the mom of somebody who is currently, facing some time. How do y'all, from those roles, what do you think about what's going on, and how do you help to minister to those who are around you and to your own family in the midst of those situations?
Okay. Well, like I said, I believe that God allowed this to happen, the protest, and I'm talking about the peaceful part of it. I believe God allowed this because some things need attention, and these situations that have happened, there needed to be some light shed on some things that were going on, because there are good police officers too. There's some bad apples, but there's some good ones too.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the good ones. I'm going to say that I appreciate the good police officers that are out there and doing the right thing, because, and I'll even share this. When my son got arrested this last time that he went to prison, he told me, he said, Mama, he said, those police officers were so nice to me. He said they got, because it was during the summertime, he said they gave me something to drink. He said they kept making sure I was okay. He said they didn't even handcuff me. You know, he said they were going to take me to jail. He said, but they didn't handcuff me. He said they treated me nice. And these were white police officers. You understand what I'm saying? So every police officer is not a bad officer, but you do have bad apples. But in the midst of all this, I can say that I pray that God will bring unity with the people and the police officers, because no matter what's going on, we need police officers, because if we didn't have them, and things come, I mean, what would our life be like if we didn't have police officers? But I think the situations that's happened where you know, people just got killed for nothing, you know, where they got brutalized for nothing. That's the part that hurts so bad, you know, for those that do that, you know, and pretty much don't have remorse for it. But I appreciate the good officers. I do. I appreciate them, because if it wasn't for the good officers, we'd all be in trouble, you know.
And I'll be brief. I mean, they are as annoyed, I would imagine, with this last thing that just took place, you know, because, you know, this has set the profession back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I mean,
It was very hurtful. Very hurtful.
I know that they're as upset about this as we are in that regard. And you're absolutely right, man. There are folks out there doing the job.
The bad apples always get the attention, just like the looters get the attention.
Yes.
But you have to police each other, like he talks about. I mean, I know that he's very good at and it is still very good at what he does. But they have to be the solution to the problem and not the issue, the problem. I hate to use those words, but it is different, like Darren said, coming from both sides. I mean, I have both sides to defend and speak of, and it makes a difference.
Yes, because I tell you, my heart hurts for those mothers. I mean, for the whole family, but especially for the mothers, you know, because I don't even want to imagine that could have been my son. I don't even want to imagine that, you know. And I think I've cried so many tears since all this happened, especially since, you know, when they keep showing the films and stuff, you know, about everything. And I cry and I cry. I think I cried for a whole week, you know, because
Mr. Floyd crying out for his mom, who is
yes.
I mean, that just ripped my heart out.
Yes.
And I also looked at it as if, well, heavens, the other three are standing there, you know, intervene, step in. Hey, you know, knock him off. I mean,
and that's why I said I can't even imagine that happening to my son. I don't want to imagine that. You understand what I'm saying? So
well, and I think we're all praying for a world where that's not going to happen. The problem is, you know, I think we sometimes overestimate the world's ability to bring about true peace and justice, because we're never going to do it apart from the gospel. We're never going to do it apart from, you know, we in this world, you will have trouble, Jesus said. And I mean, we just live in a fallen and broken world. And so I'm just praying that we as the church can continue to bring his kingdom in us. And to that end, and as we kind of get to the end here, and I know Miles and Peggy, you got your dinner about ready to be we gotta wrap it up. I don't want to keep Miles from dinner tonight. But what give us some idea. We're this series called The Little Things. And I listen, I'm not saying what's going on right now is it's a big thing, but that's the point. It's a big thing, and sometimes we feel like it's such a big thing we can't do anything. From your perspective, talking to your white brothers and sisters in Christ, what are some little things that we can do to help bring about the kind of world we all want to live in? What would you say to us who, honestly, we want to see peace, we want to see reconciliation, we want to see the kind of world that Dr. King talked about. We want to see that dream become a reality. What would you say? What are some little tangible things that we could do to make a difference to bridge the racial divide?
it starts with conversation. I mean, it's really as simple as that. You know, engage folks, talk to us. You know, offer words of encouragement, words of support. But my thing is the conversations take place again within people's groups, coworkers, whatever. I think if more people stepped up and sort of corrected people for, you know, for making some offhanded comment or some racial, you know, remark, starts there.
It could be like the friendship bread. If we have our group and then that one does their group and they do their group and they do their group, just imagine how it just the little thing, the next right thing could go on to the next person and they share with 5 or 10 or whatever. And it could spread like wildfire.
Yeah, small and tangible be conversation. It's okay. It's conversation.
And I think some people are just afraid to bring it up. Like they don't want to say the wrong thing, so they say nothing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know necessarily if there's a wrong thing in you know, to say. I mean, if you offer words of encouragement, or if, you know, you disagree with the entire movement and you know, that kind of thing, then I would imagine there's going to be some back and forth with that. But
A debate.
yeah.
What's the little thing you'd suggest?
Me?
Yes. What?
I would say keep doing what you're doing, because I still go back to when you all accepted my son, even in his situations. Keep doing what you're doing because you reached out to him. So, you know, that's what I would say. I mean, I see where you are reaching out to the community. You know, you are trying to help. I saw it firsthand. You know, so I would say just keep doing what you're doing. And then when you say the little things, like, okay, just like when the protesters came through and the church had the water out there for them, a lot of people might say that's good, but to me that was a big thing because you were supporting them. It wasn't directly, but it was like indirectly. They were being supported. You know, so I'll say keep doing what you're doing.
Mm. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight and for being a part of this. I really appreciate it. I know this is a painful conversation, and I didn't want to, you know, when this idea occurred to me early this morning, and I prayed about it for a while before I texted. We had other plans for tonight, but I just feel like maybe this was a little thing to just and thank you for giving some time to do it, and thank you for being a part of our church. You know, Dr. King said the most segregated hour in America is Sunday mornings at 11. And man, I grieve that. I really do. As a pastor of a predominantly white church, I want to see racial reconciliation. I want to see church look more like heaven. But we got a long way to go.
Do you remember, Gary, when Miles had a visitor came up to him, an African American woman visitor?
No, she was white.
Oh, she was white. I'm sorry. And she said, "Do you tell me?"
She just asked, was I offended that you know, there weren't more African Americans within the church body? And
like, oh.
you know,
I know I'm not. I mean, when people come in, that's good, but I'm happy.
Right.
I invited her.
Happen.
I invited her back and invited her to a grow group.
That's
right. Absolutely.
You know what other people see, you just don't know what other people see.
That's right.
I mean, you know what they see, but you don't know how they see.
That's right.
Well,
Pastor Gary, thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
If you would, to close us in prayer and just pray for our city, our community, and we'll just close out tonight just praying for the reconciliation that we know comes through Jesus.
I didn't hear.
Who was praying?
Darren, you're muted.
Oh, Darren.
I didn't hear who was praying either. So
I'm asking you, Darren.
I will pray now.
Or you, whichever way I'm supposed to point.
Whichever way it is. Let's pray. God, we thank you for who you are, God, that you graciously show us love when we don't deserve it. And God, we pray that we can show love to others at all times when they deserve it and when they don't deserve it. One thing that sticks out to me from Geneva was just the statement that you get respect when you show respect. And so I pray for all of us, God, that you can give us eyes and hearts to be able to show respect. And when we feel disrespected, to give us the attitude of you, just to choose to lay down our lives for other people. God, even while we were still enemies of you, you still laid down your lives for us. And so we just pray for those opportunities for us to show love and not just to be right, and pray these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Enjoy your dinner, Miles.
Thank you. Stuffed peppers.
Yay.
Love y'all.